Hello and welcome to episode 56 of the Dash Force Free Amigos podcast. I'm Mark Mason and I'm joined by my two fellow amigos. Brian, how's it going?
Excellent.
And Joel Valenzuela, how are you?
Very, very good. I'm energizing.
What are you drinking there? That's not coffee.
Nitro cold brew.
Okay.
Yeah, it's coffee.
And we have a mystery guest. Brian, would you like to introduce our mystery guest?
It's Evan. Evan's gonna be joining us later. Isn't that right?
All the way from Hong Kong. Can you believe it?
Is it not Evan? Who is it? I thought it was Evan.
We're in a rubber mask, though.
Right. Okay. For those that don't know, our mystery guest is Kevin McKernan, who is behind putting the cannabis on the Dash blockchain. So this is actually going to be quite interesting. I think Kevin's actually got a lot to show us, and I think Brian's actually got a lot of questions for you. But first things first, how's it going, Kevin? Thanks for coming on.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me on. We love the fact that you're giving us this all the spotlight and attention on the project. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it deserves it because there's a whole lot of. It's one of those. I hope I don't offend anyone by saying that, but it seems like it's one of those projects that just totally slipped through the cracks in terms of no one got it. No one stuff was talking about. Some people got really excited about it, and most everyone just was like, "When are we getting a debit card?" Oh, just think coming out, and just like started going to other stuff and just blew past this. So that's exactly why we have this platform here right now. So yeah, take it away. What's this thing all about?
Well, the first proposal that I think folks probably may know more about was back in December, and this was one to move our Cannapedia database over to Dash. So this is a database where we're sequencing cannabis genomes. We're collecting a lot of information about these plants, and then we're hashing and stashing that information on the Dash blockchain. We were doing it on Bitcoin, and everyone knows what happened to Bitcoin in December. It became kind of a massive exodus out of Bitcoin because we really couldn't get any transactions done. And so we realized Dash is a great vehicle for the cannabis industry for a variety of reasons I'm certain everyone here is aware of, but it also is a very similar block structure as Bitcoin in that it has an op return. So we can actually stash hashes of files into Dash. And the reason we care about this is that those hashes of the DNA sequence files become prior art tools for proving that certain plants exist at a certain time. Why is that important in cannabis? Well, that's important in cannabis because they are issuing cannabis patents now, and the USPTO doesn't know a dab from a hash from their left hand. I mean, they're just issuing these because they don't understand the cannabis field. It is somewhat of a gray area and a dark market, and so they don't know art. They miss prior art, and then they end up issuing patents that are extraordinarily broad. So they've issued, I think, 4 now, one of which is extraordinarily broad. It's something known as it's a patent on a type 2 plant. And these are plants that make both CBD and THC. This is arguably the most medicinal plant that people need for epilepsy, and you name the disease, it probably has an impact on it. And it's scaring everybody that we're going to have a traditional pharmaceutical model in cannabis where they patent these things up and erect enormous barriers to get medicine through the FDA so that it is not a democratized form of medicine. And so we're trying to fight that by sequencing as a service for a variety of growers to defensively protect themselves from getting submarined by patents.
And people were asking about how much of the information is actually on the blockchain, and I think you answered it saying that there's enough to where it can be provably. Explain that.
So it's just a SHA-256 hash, not even an X11 hash, just SHA-256, and of the sequencing file. The sequencing we do, depending on the client, is either 3.2 million bases of DNA sequencing for like $500, and if people want to do whole genome shotgun, which means sequencing the entire genome, that's closer to 3,500. And customers do it different sizes for different reasons, but we put all of that sequence information public on Cannapedia so people can download it. We're leveraging the Dash blockchain as a time-stamping immutable vehicle because if we were to get either acquired or go out of business or get raided, then some testing labs have get raided, but we don't test cannabis per se. We just, would disappear, the database would disappear, and the timestamps would go with it. But the Dash blockchain decentralizes that risk so that those timestamps of when that data existed are a permanent record, if you will, distributed globally.
And what's the difference between the first proposal and the latest proposal?
So the first proposal had two aspects to it. It was one to migrate our Canopedia over to the Dash blockchain, but also to sponsor CanMed. CanMed is a conference that we hold every year. It's usually at Harvard Med School. That's where it was for the last 2 years, but it's been tripling every year, and we can't fit it at Harvard. Harvard had a 900-person max, and so we moved it to UCLA this year because California is legalizing, and they can house 1,500 people. So that's in October, from October 22nd to 24th. We're having a crypto track there because we want to get everyone together in the cannabis space to talk about how do we use blockchains, from ICO funding to seed to sale tracking to doing cannabis genetic blockchains. There's a host of applications that we can use, including the stuff that Alt36 is doing with getting the point of sale currency going. So there's really a good 4 reasons for that crowd to hear about Dash. It happens to be all the KOLs, these key opinion leaders in the field that come and speak at CanMed. And so these are folks that are in charge of some of the largest grows in the world and have some of the most influence over the scientific direction of the field. So that was the first proposal. The second proposal, I think, to your second question, differs in that what we wanted to do at CanMed was showcase how we could use Dash above and beyond as just a currency and above and beyond just a notarization system. What if we could fund solving one of the largest problems the cannabis field has had? And that has actually evaded us for about 7 years now, which is back in 2011, I sequenced the first cannabis genome and put it public on the Amazon cloud. But the sequencing technology we had back then left it in like 100,000 pieces. We really want to get it down to 20 chromosomes. And so we figured, why don't we try and tackle that problem with Dash and publish it in a very unique way? Instead of trying to get this through the journals that are always censoring cannabis science, why don't we just do a crypto-funded peer review, where we put out crypto bounties to have researchers come in and review the work and basically put the entire process of peer review transparently etched into blockchains so that no one can tamper with it, and so that it's as transparent as possible. And we think that's actually a really important thing for global ledgers that are handling the truth of monetary transactions, that we eventually, just like people want a separation of church and state, we need a separation of money and state, and we need a separation of science and state, because too often the science is getting politicized, and nowhere is that more evident than the cannabis field.
So what are they peer reviewing? So like if you had like that Jamaican lion I saw, so they're coming back and just peer reviewing that and doing their own tests and saying, yes, we come up with the same results? Or
yeah, so sometime we've done this once before as a pilot with the kratom genome. So the DEA started threatening to make kratom illegal, and so a few people anonymously sequenced that and threw out a crypto bounty for people to come and confirm it is in fact kratom. They didn't just like put cat pictures online. And so we'd probably start there, saying, let's just confirm that we've in fact got the genome that we claim we were going to do, which was a type 2 plant. And the reason we're targeting that is for important intellectual property reasons we can get into in a bit. And make sure that we're not, this isn't fabricated data that's up on the web. It actually really looks like cannabis, and it is what we state it is. And we can easily get that work done through distributing Dash as an incentive to various bioinformatics scientists in the field.
And what are the incentives? How much is the...
Well, that's a good question, is what they should be. The first time we did this, it was 0.1 Bitcoin, and that was back in November when it was around 10 grand. So I think it ended up being about $1,000, $500 up front, $500 when they finished. And the remarkable thing is the person did the review in 4 days and actually repeated some of the analysis and did some novel analysis as well. I've never had a peer review take less than 4 months. It's just a complete change in the incentive model for peer review. And the reason for that is that peer review is basically a tragedy of the commons. You basically beg researchers to do it for free. And so it's no surprise that we have a 50% failure to reproduce other papers, because the people reviewing these things aren't getting paid, and it's the last thing on their priority list. And they tend to, people tend to put them off and do them in between meetings. It's not an effective market. So, we're proposing probably $1,000 per reviewer, because the cost of submitting a paper through the traditional peer review process is about $3,000. All that money goes to the journal. They keep it. A researcher gets none. The actual peer reviewers get nothing. And actually, the researcher who submits the paper then has it copyrighted and owned by the journal. And if they want to get access to it again, they got to pay $50 or $60. And so the whole economic system is backwards. And this is happening on government-funded work too. Like, you pay for it as a taxpayer, then it gets copyrighted by Elsevier. Then they charge you $50 to get $50 or $60 to get access to it and keep the copyright. So it's completely a parasitic relationship on the research establishment that needs to go away, and Dash can completely annihilate it.
No, you said. Go ahead.
Interesting about what you were talking about earlier. That was more on the technical side of things. So first off, I believe you mentioned opcodes, correct?
Op return, I think, is the feature inside the Dash blockchain that allows you to stuff a notarization in it.
Yes, and I believe that the Bitcoin Cash community was going nuts over using stuff like that for their own purposes. And so one thing that a lot of people sort of get lost in this whole narrative is that Dash, in my view, of course, otherwise I'd be doing something else, in my view, is like a modern version of Bitcoin Cash. It's kind of like Bitcoin Cash is still pretty cool, but it's like 4 years. It's retro. It's retro Dash. And the other, which is
I would completely agree with that. They're struggling. They don't have a treasury. They're struggling to fund their core devs. They don't have a private send yet. I mean, there's a host of things it is yet to do that Dash has already pioneered.
Yeah, and so it's interesting to view from the concept of, a lot of people view the fork to have happened in 2017. I think the fork might have happened in 2014.
Yeah,
when Dash diverged from Bitcoin Cash, or what was Bitcoin Cash like back then, and then now you have kind of a different development branch that so far is like an untouched version, an unimproved version of Dash over the last 4 years, but it's trying extra things. But the other thing I think is very interesting is this goes back to a lot of legal implications, because more than anything, the property law is a codification of who owns what. And I believe you kind of missed Hernando de Soto found out that one of the reasons why free market systems work in the West but not in a lot of developing world has been because there hasn't been a lot of codification of actual property rights, and then therefore people can't use their property for capital, and they can't take out loans on it or whatever. They can't do anything like that. And so this is interesting because one of the biggest ways we as human beings, depends on where we live, but almost anywhere we live, though, one of the biggest ways we intersect with government is through some kind of a codification, whether it be identity, like, in the US it's driver's license or passport or whatever. There's other ID cards in other places. And then, legal contracts and codifying property and ownership and things like that. All that kind of codification type stuff has been. And then now, as you're talking about, now we're talking about codifying and, I wouldn't use the word patenting because that's like a curse word almost to some people. It's like we're talking about codifying things on a blockchain instead, and just having that be the authoritative source rather than a government document.
It's very true. And I think it's important to showcase to the world that you'll often find the excuse for these types of state-based governments that are based on force as being one that's wrapped in we need it, otherwise we don't get research funded, right? They use the NIH as an example of, well, if we didn't have this war-prone government, we wouldn't have the NIH. And so and they actually believe that that's the only way you can get research done. But this isn't true. In fact, far more research is done in the private sector. And nothing would be more potent in my mind to demonstrate that, hey, there's a different printing press out there. It's not made of fictional US reserve notes. It's actually made of a cryptocurrency that's quite tangible. Tangible comes from tangent, right? It's a mathematical concept of being able to mathematically grasp something. And Dash and digital currencies are like that. And to the extent that they're funding charities like we have at Dash, or they're funding some scientific projects like this project with Canopedia so that we can improve the human condition, that's going to wake people up to realize, wait, that's a programmable form of money. That's a programmed emission rate. That's not a variable emission rate that politics can get involved in and hyperinflate the currency. If I can get my research done there, well, then I don't have to be the lipstick on the pig of the war machine over here and be utilized as a marketing campaign for why we need government. Now, that being said, voluntary forms of government, like we have in Dash, are a really exciting thing because this is a completely new world, and this changes the whole definition of government because it's peaceful. It's one where you opt in or you opt out. You don't have to be forced into it, and it's not based on imaginary state lines. It's based on community standards.
Yeah, and you can have a hard fork at any time that there's a split in consensus. And I mean, there was a hard fork back in the 1860s in the U.S. that didn't go that well. And hopefully, I mean, there's never that much of a placid hard fork ever, but it does tend to be.
Yeah, Roger Ver might disagree. He may feel a little abused by that, but
yeah, exactly.
I'm just curious, what's your motivation behind this? Why are you so passionate about this subject? Where does it all stem from?
Oh, yeah, so that's a good point. So my career started on the Human Genome Project back in 1996. I was fresh out of college, and two guys at MIT were running the research and development team there, and then suddenly just upped and quit because they were, I guess it was viewed, if you're still at MIT after you graduated, you weren't cool. So they went somewhere else and left me the reins of running this team. And of course, the Human Genome Project scaled up tremendously, and I just happened to be there. And right time, right place. I was managing that R&D team. In the moment we got the Human Genome Project done, we started building faster DNA sequencers that could resequence it 100,000 times faster. Those matured around 2006 or 2007. Those got acquired by a company called Applied Biosystems. I went with that acquisition, and we started immediately putting them on cancer. If you sequence a cancer genome and you sequence a patient's genome, you can find these mutations that are an Achilles heel druggable target. And of course, after you're done doing that, you want to have a good selection of drugs to look at. Well, the problem we have in cancer is most of them are incredibly toxic. They're playing this game of trying to thread a needle between killing the tumor and killing the patient. And that's when cannabinoids came into my view. And I realized, look at this. Here's a set of compounds that impact cancer, and they're some of the safest compounds on Earth. How come these aren't at the front of chemotherapy? How come this isn't the first line treatment? And that's when I kind of went down the wormhole of, oh my God, this is why. Because there isn't a patent system that controls this for pharmaceutical companies to build moats and to build, to basically violate everyone else's property rights so that they can get a monopoly on a drug. Through the FDA process or through patenting, what have you. That's why cannabis has really, I think, been held back, is that it is such a threat to an enormous pharmaceutical pipeline of over $600 billion a year. And no one really has a good grasp on it from an IP standpoint right now.
Yeah, if you look into the history, which I'm sure you have, you'll see like in 1974, I believe it was some of the first studies were done. I think they were government studies showing that cannabis had was an increased apoptosis and decreased angiogenesis.
That's
and then
right.
they was repeated again in Spain in like the 2000s.
Yeah.
And a lot of that.
Daniel Guzman repeated that work. And in fact, Christina Sanchez, who's on that paper, is speaking at CanMed. And another gentleman spoke on this last year at CanMed, which was Sean McAllister. And they've been doing great work showing that these compounds don't just treat the symptoms of cancer, like nausea and cachexia. They actually shrink the tumors.
Yeah.
And that's remarkable. Now, they may not cure all cancers, which is what you might read about on the internet, but they're certainly killing some. And we need to understand that. We need to be able to research this. We need to be able to figure out which tumors they molecularly target so that we're more informed on when to use them and when not to.
Yeah, there's different lines. And I think most of the scientific stuff has been done just like in the Petri dish type studies, although there's plenty of anecdotal stuff from Rick Simpson and his hemp oil stuff and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, so that's what dragged me down this wormhole. Is I saw it was playing a role in cancer, and I realized, all right, well, I'm in a position to make a difference here. I had a non-compete with a company also that became so big it was all of biotechs to go do something when I quit to basically that they wouldn't approve of. They're not in the cannabis field at the time, because in 2011 when I jumped ship from LifeTech, they had no interest in the cannabis field, so I could adequately take genomics into that space and not violate any NDAs and non-competes.
Have you had any pushback from like big pharma or any kind of interventions trying to steer you off course?
Well, what I do see is that the scientific literature in the space is very difficult to reproduce. And I think that's partly because not a lot of people can reproduce it. There's not a lot of funding for cannabis right now, and the government's definitely playing a role in that. The other thing I've seen is that the peer review process for cannabis seems to be mocked many times. I've submitted a couple papers that have been kind of mocked in peer review, and these peer reviews are usually anonymous. So this is kind of like anonymous Twitter trolls. That's about the quality that you get in some of these peer reviews. In fact, you can even go back in 2011 and look at what Nature magazine did. Nature is a really respectable journal, high impact factor. And we published the cannabis genome. They wrote an editorial kind of mocking it like a Cheech and Chong project. 5 years later, they've devoted entire journals to it now. And so this is the type of ingrained thinking we have in science. It's very much hierarchical and focused on centralized decision-making, where there's a large $30 billion pot of money that gets handed out from NIH every year and a variety of other government institutions. And that creates hierarchical thinking. It doesn't create decentralized, pushing innovation to the edges type of thinking. So I'm excited about the crypto space because as it grows, I think we'll see more and more of this be utilized to solve market-tested scientific problems that there's a market price for. And I think there's a good market price for cannabis right now. Solving this problem is going to open up freedom for cannabis. And with there's freedom with cannabis, there's going to be more freedom for currency in cannabis. There's going to be more freedom for all different types of applications with Dash when Dash Drive comes live. So I think it's a really exciting time to be in the field.
Yeah, Dr. Sanjay Gupta kind of went through that same evolution, and he put out some really good, documentaries or whatever on CNN. But yeah, his eyes were really open. It really is a miracle plant, and it is disruptive to lots of money, lots of pharmaceutical companies. And I mean, it treats any kind of inflammatory disease, it's going to treat it. That's what it does. It's amazing plant.
Do you think the cannabis community understands what you're doing and appreciates it? Like, is it in High Times magazine? Like, do you think the average?
A couple of them get it. I have to say, I think blockchains are a little bit. They haven't quite captured the imagination of the cannabis field. I think some people are technically afraid of it. You have to understand, a lot of this community has been living off the grid, up in the hills in California, and growing these things, off the radar, and so. The concepts of decentralization and putting everything public so it's completely transparent so everyone can see it is a little bit of a, whoa, wait a minute. I want to stay dark. I want to stay out of the noise and out of the fray. The wonderful thing about Dash is that I think Dash has got the right idea, and that privacy is not a binary function. It should be either or. You should have the choice in privacy or not. And I think a lot of coins get that wrong, is they try and make them 100% private or not. There are a lot of transactions in life that you want to be public, like all of the work we're doing for Dash. We want 100% transparent so everyone can audit it. We don't want those hidden as sends. We want them. You don't put your bank notices on a postcard, so some of that stuff should stay private. And I think Dash has figured that out, and it's unique in that regard that you can do either private or public types of transactions. And I think it's going to be important in the cannabis industry.
Well, Kevin, me and Joel were just participating in the live chat, and someone pointed out that Dash could eventually cure cancer, and they put afterwards, just another day on the job for Dash. So can you imagine? I mean, I already thought Dash was pretty awesome myself, but Dash could cure cancer in some way in the future or play a role. Absolutely. Do you foresee that happening?
I think it's bigger than cancer. I actually think when you think about how science is managed today, we're never going to get truth in media.
By tomorrow morning, there's going to be an article that just with your name says Kevin McKernan, Dash is bigger than curing cancer.
I'm going to change the title to this video. Dash to cure cancer.
Well, let me finish that pitch so people don't think I'm ridiculous about this, but. The pitch, it's mainly coming from a perspective of having seen the inside of how science operates, and it's incredibly censored. We don't have real scientific discovery if half the papers can't be reproduced. The journals with the higher impact factor have a higher retraction rate, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a total disaster when it comes to the scientific system. And I think it's all comes down to economics. We don't have incentives for people to be very scrupulous with peer review, and we don't have a pricing signal so that you can stratify it. Imagine if you could do peer review and say, you know what, I really care about this paper. It's an important project of ours. It's going to be an entire product line. I'm going to pay 20 grand for peer review so that it'll be enough to fund someone to completely reproduce the work. And then it will get sort of a platinum stamp on it so that this science we know has actually been double checked by somebody else in the lab. We don't have that right now in peer review. We just go off of people's reputations and we go off of anonymous peer reviewers half the time. When you invert that and you change the incentive models in science and you disintermediate these parasitic copyright trolls that we have at the journals, you've turned science into a very transparent system. And oftentimes, science is used politically to push certain agendas as to which direction we should be funding solar panels or global warming, and you name it. It becomes a church in and of itself when it's centralized. And we have to break away from that. Otherwise, we will not have truth in media. We need truth in science first.
So what's left to be
like the
done?
nice little reference there.
What's the next stage? Like what do you still want to see happen? Like
well, I'm still very intrigued about Dash Drive because science often consumes a lot of data. And right now we're doing what we can, posting this stuff on Amazon, and we encourage all of our clients to replicate the data that we post and maybe even torrent it. But I think there needs to be a monetary incentive on data. And right now, 17%, you get a 17% decay in data per year with scientific data. And this is mainly because people are stuffing it in socialized databases that don't have price signals. And they don't stuff all the data because those databases, of course, are a real pain in the ass to use. They're run by government agencies that don't listen to customers. And so it takes a PhD about a day to put data into NCBI. It's not like YouTube, right? And so as a result of that, people don't put all their data in there. And the measured rate is about 17% of data decays per annum in the scientific field. If you put a price signal on that data and had a monitor like Dash Drive, you can suddenly figure out which data needs to be in deep storage, glacier storage, because it's not getting access very quickly and is in very low demand, and which data needs to be on higher bandwidth drives. And that's not happening right now. So we would love to see everything we're sequencing to find a monetary home on Dash Drive that can pay people for hosting it and get appropriate microtransactions in place so that the data that's extraordinarily popular is going to live on those drives for very long because there's a monetary reason to keep it. We don't have that with the government databases. They get shut down every time there's a ceiling debate, budget ceiling debate.
The title of your second proposal caught a lot of eyes. Make Dash a household name in 3 different $20 billion industries. As a part of your proposal and outreach, what you're doing, is there any aspect where you're reaching out to media or PR? Does that come in it? Or are you just focused on the job, getting the information on the blockchain?
No, we have been spending a lot more time going to scientific conferences, and because I think it's important that we get this in front of the genomics market. The genomics market is growing at over a 20% CAGR rate as a compound annual growth rate. And they are very data intensive. And of course, they're all starved for funding at times. So I think they're going to find this to be really appealing that a cryptocurrency is starting to fund scientific projects that have huge social impact. So I just spoke at the Broad Institute. The Broad Institute is at MIT and Harvard. It's probably one of the premier genome centers and research centers in the world, and gave a whole talk that was dedicated to Dash. It's online. You guys can point to it for the audience. I was at the Society for In Vitro Biology as well, showcasing what we're doing there, and we're going to continue that pattern of demonstrating what we can do with Dash at various scientific conferences. We also putting some outreach to some of the media folks that we know in the genomic space. We've had a long history in that space, and I know a lot of the people, the various journals that are out there, and we're showing them the story as well. The third area we're focusing on is making sure we get to the publishing market, because a lot of people in science are very adamant that we never have another Aaron Swartz moment again. I don't know if your audience is familiar with Aaron Swartz, but he pulled 1 million journals out of MIT's JSTOR and put them public, and the copyright industry went nuts on this and chased him down, and he ended up committing suicide because he was faced with like 30 years in prison. Those were mostly journals that were tax paid. All right,
Yeah.
there was science that was paid by tax dollars. They should be public.
Yeah.
And the only reason they're being hidden like this is because we have copyright trolls out there. And of course, anyone who's in the Bitcoin space and the Dash space knows that copyright is dead. I mean, once you have distributed torrented systems that you can't shut down, it's gone. So that whole market is very receptive to the idea of open science. In fact, they've made some open source journals now, like PLOS is an open source journal, the Public Library of Science. And we're speaking to some of those folks as well to see, hey, what do you guys think about trying to get Dash involved in either your preprint servers or experiment with it on some of your open access journals to see if we can make this model work.
Yeah, some of your project has got quite a bit of articles. It's got a lot of press from what I've seen. I mean, there's projects or proposals with hundreds of Dash, and you guys have gotten quite a bit of press for this.
It touches a lot of points at once. Everyone's passionate about cannabis. Everyone sees there's a problem in scientific research right now with peer review. Everyone can see that genomics is potentially going to transform the agricultural industry if it hasn't already. And personalized medicine hits home. 1 in 3 people get cancer, right? So we're talking about freeing a plant that's going to affect somebody in your lifetime, if not you yourself. And there's no reason for this to be these old models we don't need of locking up this IP, pushing it through an FDA. I mean, the FDA is a whole nother mess to go into. If you actually look at their funding source, 2/3 of the money going into the FDA come from the pharmaceutical companies that they actually regulate. This is something known as the PDUFA Act. It's completely legal to do this. And so that's a whole scam. And putting cannabis through there, some companies are doing it and bless their heart for making it happen. But I see a world where you can grow your medicine in your backyard and you can tailor it to your personal genome because those tools are out there and they're getting ever cheaper by the day.
Yeah, I remember GW Pharmaceuticals. They've been promising stuff for quite a while. They had sprays and stuff, but I guess it has to go through all the different FDA phases, and I think it's available in England, right?
It is. And what is the FDA going to bring to that equation other than an $800 million bill that GW is going to have to defray by having, tenfold more expensive cannabis in a dispensary? And then the next thing that'll probably happen is GW will then say, well, FDA, you got to shut down some of these dispensaries that are claiming CBD is medical. You can't say medical unless you go through the FDA, and they're already sending letters out. That's somewhat frightening. Now I know a lot of the people at GW. They have a big heart. They're working really hard to get people with epilepsy, and they're playing by the game. I don't blame the players of the game. I blame the game. So let's change the rules of the game.
Well, a couple of quick questions real quick. Now, you mentioned Alt36 earlier. Have you been in contact with those guys? I know they're not the easiest to get a hold of.
We have, and we haven't had much progress there. I think they're initially thinking of coming to CanMed. We're still encouraging them to do so. I don't know if they've decided to come or not, but they should, because there's going to be a lot of key opinion leaders there, and that's they need to see that. And there's competition coming in on them as well. We're very dialed into the cannabis space because we have customers in 30 different states. We're in pretty much all of the testing labs, and the testing labs are really the gatekeepers of what cannabis goes out the door. And these guys are already starting to see, I think, Toke's network coming in with a working ATM in Nevada. So we want to make sure that there's a working prototype out there that can compete with that and really demonstrate that having Dash in the front end is really key for the customers and to move those transactions. I think we're also going to want to try and get it in the seed to sale tracking system because that is really important for a lot of the government regulation. And if you find your way into the seed to sale tracking system, you'll probably have good inroads into the storefront activity.
Yeah, that could be a lot of transaction. Another RFID tagging all the plants from the seed to sell. Wow, they
are. And what's starting to pick up, and the reason why the transaction volumes have been picking up here on Cannapedia, I think last couple weeks ago we did about 80 strains got loaded up. It's probably the most per week we've ever loaded up. And what's picking up is some of the states are realizing that the RFID tag system is failing. When material gets diverted, people rip those barcodes right off. The only barcode that actually makes it from seed to sale is the genetics. And so they're realizing if they sequence their mother plants, they now have a fingerprint of the plant and they have a way that they can track it. The growers like this because it's actually a barcode that helps them. The barcodes on the RFID tags are meaningless numeric numbers, but the barcodes that we're producing with Canopedia are actually fingerprints of the plant that can tell them how to breed it. How inbred is it? How outbred is it? What's it related to? That's a much more powerful barcoding system than just random numbers that are tagged to plants. The regulators like it too, surprisingly, because they're like, hey, if I want my 30% taxes, I need anti-diversion tools. Fingerprint those puppies up. So they're happy with it. And then the customers like it as well, because the customers want to know if they're using the same strain state to state. If you get Blue Dream in your state and then you have to go to Colorado and you can't bring it with you, the Blue Dream you pick up in Colorado is not going to be the same. And that's messy for a patient. Maybe not a big deal for a recreational player, but for patients, they really have to know their strains. And so Canopedia helps them synchronize those state-to-state issues.
Yeah, one thing I saw just recently is that they were spraying the plants with DNA microscopically, so they could track it for the diversion. That was mind-blowing. I was like, what are they spraying on the plants, number one? Is that safe
What are they spraying?
Yeah,
they're spraying some DNA barcode, which is ridiculous. They should just read the plant's genome. They already have DNA they can read. Now it's like paraquat all over again. They're adding additives that have not been properly tested for safety right on top of the plant. When it's to me, that's one of those make work projects. It was funded by a government agency to do this, and it doesn't make any sense other than to dig holes and fill them back up again.
It could track the plants. I mean, the genome, because somebody could have the same cuts, 2 different, 20, 100,000 different dispensaries.
You could have
clones.
Work for what
they're
right.
It would work for what they're doing, but it just seems dangerous spraying. I don't know if they that's just not. I hope they they don't mandate that. That would not just doesn't seem healthy.
No, they're doing that in Colorado, and I doubt the DNA is harmful. It's more of what they solubilize it in.
Right.
That'll probably be some other adjuvant they put on, so it dries and it's sterilized, and that it doesn't decay over time. And that's a whole nother beast. But
are they mandating that?
I heard in Colorado they're experimenting with it. I don't know. I don't believe it's a mandate. There's a lot of pushback on it.
Yeah.
And they claim the reason they want to do it is so that they can track the clones, the things that are genetically identical. But it's to me, I think it's the wrong way about doing it.
Well, joining us all the way from France is Alex Werner, and he's been listening to you, Kevin. And I think he's probably pretty excited because I think we're basically saying that he's partly responsible for playing in a role that could eventually help prevent cancer in the future. How does that feel, Alex?
Well, I'm just waiting to tell that to my mother. She will love that. No, basically, and that's the beauty of everything is that we end up just creating a protocol and some piece of software to be used, and the amount of things that you can do, solve, create on top of that is pretty huge, and we know that we cannot really expect what will happen. But yeah, clearly I never saw the thing in this form, and I clearly love that. Yeah.
Can you see any other use? I mean, Kevin mentioned Dash Drive earlier. I think there's some changes going on behind the scenes, but as you're Mr. Evo, from what Kevin said, have you seen any other utility or uses that it might be able to use? Because at the moment he's just using SHA-256. So
for now, what he's doing is that he set up directly the hash into the blockchain itself. Dash Drive intend to fix kind of this solution, however, providing you the ability to have more information than what is limited by OP-return. So I clearly see a use for this project to look into Dash Drive, and I would even prefer that than using OP-return. Just for the sake of saving a little bit of the first layer to be only transactional and state transition, and having Dash Drive to deal with the data itself.
Yeah, when is that Dash Drive? Go ahead. I was just going to ask, when is that Dash Drive going to be ready?
Yeah. Well, we do expect a lot in making that Dash Drive. We do take into consideration a lot of different cases where one could be something really simple as, I don't know, let's say Twitter, and another will be something really complex, including thousands of data per day, etc., for only one DAP. So we do take into consideration different type of usage of dash drive that could be done per, let's say, DAP per project. So yeah, we clearly intend to be ready for this one. Well, it also depends on the amount of data you want to put. Everything has a cost, right? You have to incentivize. You have to incentivize miner to include that. So you still will have a cost for the data. But yeah.
So I always get a little giddy when I think about where this could be in a couple of years. Imagine in a few years, people are publishing their science. They're using Dash as this ledger of truth for scientific foundations. And people start to ask, well, what backs Dash? What is a cryptocurrency? And you can say, well, it's mathematics backs Dash, and it's subjective value theory, and people value it. Those are all great arguments. But when they start seeing that it's actually the platform and the ledger for scientific discovery and for human entrepreneurship, that suddenly, I think, presents a very different value proposition as to how you value a cryptocurrency. I like a lot of Chris Bernisk's work, but it looks mostly at like velocity of money equations, which are great. But I think that you have to also step back and say, okay, what happens if all of science is getting published on this platform, and it's actually a platform that's used to ensure that we have the highest credentialing and the highest level of peer review and accountability on a platform like this. I think it really changes the value proposition. So I don't know. I find that to be, I never thought cryptocurrencies would be backed by something like that, but I could imagine if they were, it'd be a little easier to explain to my parents what's behind Dash.
Well,
Yeah.
Actually, you could do some part of it as, let's say you wanted to have one simple sentence, one quote that you wanted to set up on the blockchain for the eternity. You had that. You still have this possibility already today, and in most major blockchain Bitcoin based, you can do that very easily. So we already have some kind of foundation on being able to persist some element. I will just take, for instance, the Genesis block on Bitcoin. So for me, it's actually more like just I don't want to use the term evolution here, but I mean it's just the next step. You start with ability to store like 80 bytes, and slowly you start to open to other type of usage. I guess it's not so much a new thing because it was one of the first things that was done on Bitcoin with Opereturn very, very early. We had Satoshi Dice, for instance, for that. But clearly, it means something. It means that we have a need here. It also meant that we have to improve the protocol itself to be able to suit the new need. I mean, even 80 byte, you still don't store that much of information in it.
Right, and that's where I think Dash Drive is so critical.
As we're looking towards the future here and looking what things could be, we already know Dash is being utilized in the healthcare industry. For example, Patientory, you can pay for your prescriptions in Dash, right? Now, in the UK, if I go to my GP, my local doctor, I explain what my symptoms are. He goes on his computer, and then it will give a list of drugs, antibiotics to recommend, right? But now it's becoming more common in the UK that if you have private healthcare, which most people don't, they actually do DNA tests now, so they can actually get drugs perfected to your DNA, because some things that you'd be generally prescribed by your local doctor don't work for your particular setup.
Yes.
Can you foresee a future where we could go to some kind of web-based evolution foundation system where we already have our DNA set up, we can put that in, and from our genetic makeup, it can look for the best strands that could work best for our genetic makeup?
Yes.
Is that to make believe, or is
No,
that
it's
a
already
reality
happening.
you think would happen?
It's already happening. So I was involved in Courage Life Sciences for 5 years, and we were sequencing the genomes of all these kids with epilepsy and mito disease, pretty much kids that look like they had an endocannabinoid breakdown. And all of that is routine now. We can sequence those genomes, and it's insurance sometimes pays for it, sometimes doesn't here in the States. It really depends on the insurance company. But that part, you're starting to see move onto blockchains because there are certain restraints on how you manage human healthcare data. At least in the United States, there's a law called HIPAA. And so you have to encrypt a lot of that data. But there are companies like Nebula Genomics and Luna DNA. These folks are all trying to put that data on a blockchain. And they're not really putting the sequence data on that blockchain. They're putting hashes of sub portions of the patient's DNA on the blockchain so that there is a record of a hash, and you know that hash relates to a particular sequence in the genome. And they're doing all this to try and get around the HIPAA law. So I think they need homomorphic encryption and other tools to do this appropriately. But that's already happening there. And the reason they want to do that is they want to monetize this differently. Right now, the DNA sequencing companies hoard all that data and try and sell it to pharma. And the patient gets nothing. And that should all get inverted. The patient owns the data legally, and they should be able to have that data and then be able to give someone the keys to it, like their doctor saying, here's my genome and here's my medical record. And if you want my data at a pharmaceutical company, you're going to pay me for it. You're not going to pay the sequencing company. It's going to go right down to the patient. So that's going to change that whole fabric so that people own their data and there's no longer a middleman selling it to pharmaceutical companies. You're going to have to crowdsource patient genetic sequence information. So yeah, Dash is a great framework for that because you're years ahead of these other platforms that are just building their own blockchains today. And particularly in the fact that you've got a drive system, you've got a monetary system, you've got a voting architecture that can actually do good governance. All these folks are going to have to re-roll that stuff all themselves, and they're a little late to it, I think.
Don't you think it's a little bit like, I mean, Joel, this must be like music to your ears. We always talk about the free market, but can you imagine a free healthcare market? Free Ross and everything. But when we think about the Silk Road and what he wanted to do, like if people had access to have their DNA code, and there are open source websites where you can actually upload that and it'll give you this information for free. But if everyone get that information and then they could go to information highway, whether it's powered by Dash, whatever, free market healthcare, where Joel, I mean, like, this is amazing, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's a little bit outside of my present, because I've had the fortune of being quite healthy and never really having to deal with the healthcare system. But that's one of the most egregious kind of industries to deal with, at least in the United States, probably around the world. I mean, I remember having to do when I was studying in the UK, having to supposedly register with the National Health Service. And I kind of didn't the whole year I was there. They yelled at me to do it, but I just avoided dealing with that paperwork until I took off. But anything that can be done to sort of democratize the medical industry is just massive, especially since so much of the global first world population is aging so rapidly.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah, those big pharma costs and everything. Just imagine the free market of the healthcare industry. This is amazing. See, this is the great thing about having you on, Alex, because you're actually a freedom fighter, because you're actually giving us the tools to actually make this a reality. Just think, anyone that gets sick, even your loved ones, imagine if you could go to an online place. As long as you had that DNA code, it could give you a list of all the things that you got wrong. You could go through. It takes out the human, the trusted part, right? So it's kind of trustless because you're using the code, right? It's all numbers, trusted numbers.
Yeah, but you have on this thing, you have one kind of interesting element is that let's say the data Facebook had on you, it will only represent you at a point of time. It will be who you are at this time because of what you think and everything. Having your DNA, however, being uploaded somewhere is kind of another deal. Your DNA won't be obsolete after some years, right? You won't change your opinion about your DNA.
Your tumors may, but yes, hopefully it doesn't happen.
Actually, you raise a really good point. This is one of the biggest problems actually within the UK. There's a company that Google purchased. It's 23andMe. It's big in the States, but they try to do it.
They're It's not a purchasing thing. The Sergey Brin used to be married to the CEO of Google, but yes, it was Google founded. Yeah.
Well, basically, they kind of banned it. So you can do the ancestry part, but there's a thing saying like how susceptible would be to cancer and all that sort of stuff. But there was a big pushback. And there's one thing that we haven't really spoke about yet, and which I think Alex was alluding to, that if we start uploading this data, that can actually cause us a huge amount of issues, because if insurance companies get hold of that, then, you know, all sorts of things sort of come into it. And we know what governments like to do with data, right? So it's a balancing act here. And, you know, whenever data's involved, you need to be careful and cautious.
But this is where cryptography wins, right? We can upload that data as SHA-256 hashes and have the keys of these things in control of the patient and only the patient. That's not happening today. Today, when your genome gets sequenced, 23andMe is selling it to the FBI. And that's known. It's happening. Police forces are using it for parallel reconstruction. They're going in and getting DNA and trying to match people to certain crime scenes. And it's an unwarranted violation of the Fourth Amendment. We get involved with blockchains, and we can change that. Put the power and control of that data directly in the hands of the actual individual who owns it, as opposed to trusting the third parties that are handling it today.
Yeah, I was just looking at the proposal, your latest proposal, and it looks like it's passing. I know it kind of dipped under there for a minute, but it is passing now. And I know that somebody was posting there's some kind of people that are trying to do a similar project. I think it may be Ethereum or ERC20 token.
Sure.
So it's
yes, yeah. I saw that, and I haven't been able to get to that website since. But someone did. No, it's an EOS one. I think it's an EOS token, and it's called Lab Ledger, I think. But lately their website's been down, so I don't know if it was an ICO pump and dump, or if it's if they're just booting up right now.
Well, it's very important we fund this project and get out ahead of this, and we have one of the experts in the field right here that's willing to work with us. So yeah, I would urge people to definitely vote for this. It's so, I mean, the potential is huge, and the amount is so little for the potential. It's a no-brainer for me.
The few metrics that I tried to put together for the Dash network asked some really grilling questions, and it was good because it helped me really refine the case for this, which was it took me a couple times in applying, and I kind of missed the mark on a few of the applications, but I think we finally got it honed. Just to give people a size of the publishing market, we think this could easily triple the transaction volume on Dash, because right now there's about $25 billion a year being absorbed out of the journal system. Okay, so we submit about 2.5 million journals a year for $3,000 a piece on average. That's about $7.5 billion. And then the other 2/3 of the money is going. The journals are getting by charging $60 per access and advertisements. Usually $6,000 to $7,000 per advertisement is what the going rate is for a 1-page ad in some of these scientific journals. So all of that money right now is getting absorbed by this middleman that's just sitting on copyright privileges. We can redirect that such that all that peer review is actually being done in Dash, and that people are actually doing peer review by using Dash as the currency to reward the actual peer reviewers and cut out the copyright middleman. Likewise, I think all the hashing and stashing of the scientific information in the review process is going to chew up transactions and op returns, because you're going to want every communication back and forth with the reviewer and the scientist to be hashed and recorded, so there's full transparency. There's probably going to be 100 of those per journal article, would be my estimate. So we can see a fair amount of transaction volume coming out of this. It really comes down to how do we get mass adoption of this? Because this project's really just to demonstrate, look, we can do it, and let's do it on a project that's really notable, so it catches people's eyes. But we haven't asked for funding to try and take it to the next level, because I think we need a little bit more clarity on Dash Drive, and probably also Dash Ventures, because I think it might be more applicable for Dash Ventures.
That sounds awesome. That sounds great.
Now, when you're talking about traffic on the network, is any of this going on currently?
Yes, you'll see. We've been posting on our updates all the genomes that we're hashing to the blockchain. So there was something like 81.
Now, has been happening today?
What's happening today? So check out. There's a website.
The reason I'm asking is because I've been monitoring the transactions on the networks, and this is the third time this month when Dash's transactions per day have exceeded those of Bitcoin Cash.
Wow!
And so the last two times The last 2 times were thanks to feed bans, paying a bunch of artists in Dash and microtransactions. And so, but he says it's not him this time. So I'm trying to figure out why are we getting where are we getting up? Could that be you guys?
We're contributing, but I don't think we're as much as feed bans. We have probably another 80 that are going to be utilized in the next few weeks of strains that are coming through and getting hashed and stashed. So all in all, there is a page that is tracking everything we're doing on this phase 2 experiment where we're sequencing this genome. And so it's updated daily with different experimental data because we're trying to do this. One thing that drives us nuts about science is the journal of negative results. People hide the stuff that didn't work, and we want to change that, where when you get into the crypto world, put every experiment online and hash it. And that way you have a timestamp for when it happened, and you get to see the journal of negative results. Even the experiments that embarrass you, put them up there. And so those are all taking small amounts of transactions as well, because we're trying to stamp the really critical pieces of data that we generate. So you will find that on the Medicinal Genomics website. It's search on there for like crypto-funded public genomics, and you'll find an ongoing log of the experiments that we're doing.
Very
Well,
nice.
speaking of open source, Alex, this is a question for you. Now, this is last week's news, really, but people have some valid concerns and questions for Dash Core. So hopefully you can give your thoughts on this. I know you can't speak for all of Core, but just your opinion would be great. So last week,
Your job
news,
Microsoft
Microsoft
don't answer the right way.
purchased
Get you buried
GitHub.
somewhere in the backyard.
Yeah. So Microsoft has acquired GitHub, right? And that is where obviously our repositories are for Dash. And people are wondering, like, what's going on? People are starting to talk about GitLab, which is kind of an open source alternative. Have you spoken internally in Core about this? Is there going to be a switch up, or are you just sitting back? How do you feel about this?
Yeah, we did talk about it, and pretty much actually even before the official announcement, because obviously, all of our work is on GitHub, and we use it very actively, and it meant a lot for us developer that GitHub has been acquired by Microsoft. So I cannot talk for the whole team just because we have multiple opinion. What I can say is that we have kind of 2 groups. One of the group being like, yeah, but Microsoft today is not the same Microsoft that it was before. They do have one of the biggest open source project on GitHub, which is Visual Code, the open source software for developing. They did open source a lot of things the last year. And so there is this opinion, and there is the other opinion, which is like, fuck you, it's my data, and don't mess with our thing. In our case, it's a little bit more different because there is no private code that will stay private forever. So in the end, it doesn't really matter if Microsoft or whatever has the code in the end, because, well, everyone will have it, right? My point on that is that today we don't have any problem if Microsoft changed the way GitHub work. We might reconsider. We have everything ready. We have the nameplate on GitLab, I guess. I know that we have the tool that will allow us to quickly transfer from GitHub to GitLab. And my point is that this should be kind of the end of the discussion. I mean, we assessed the problem. We listen to each other on what we think about it, but really there is nothing to do today. And yeah, let's just see and wait. At the moment, if we have that need, it's just one click on a button and boom, we're on GitLab. Well, and you also have Bitbucket, but yeah, GitLab is better, way better.
Yeah, Kevin was asking me about the GitHub. Did you get the answers to that, Kevin?
I don't think I have yet, no. So we just wrote a little bit of code to basically automate the notarization process. So there's a company that helped us do this called Stamp.io back in January. And they've got a great web interface for people who want to do things one at a time. But when you have to do 80 at a time, it got a little cumbersome. So we wrote a little script that helps just fire those things off the command line. So we're happy to submit that to any repository. I just didn't know where to throw it.
Yeah, I just wanted to take this opportunity with Alex to talk about 12.3 because I think there's a lot of questions being asked within the community. I know Brian's always burning my ear. Mark, where's 12.3? Where's 12.3? Brian, relax, man. We'll find out. Anyway,
I won't
cut long
relax.
story short, the Dash Core group have been giving out like monthly updates in these PDFs, what's going on with Dash, which gives department updates and also tells you what's next in the pipeline. And then in the information on that, it kind of gave some information why 12.3 was slightly delayed. And it was partly due to something called Bamboo, which I believe is something to do with testnet. So there were some issues with that, which means I think that kind of delayed the implement. Can you just explain what Bamboo is and the switch up?
Yeah, I won't be able to explain what is Bamboo. I can only guess that it's something used for building procedure or something like that, and that probably in order to prepare the next release, they wanted to do something with that. I know there was this issue with Bamboo, and there is another tool that they also use. I'm not using them, so I don't know about that. And yeah.
So like what it appears is that there were.
I know that they are struggling
tests before like the main release, but there's some.
I think so,
not within Core, but with Bamboo itself. So they've had to seek an alternative because they want to do the necessary quality assurance before it's going live, right? So that seems to be what seems to be the majority of the holdup. But the good news is, I believe we can thank Macrochip for this if he's watching. He shared a quote from Ryan Taylor saying that although 12.3 has been sort of delayed, it's had no impact in delaying evolution at all. Obviously, the work's still pushing on with that. It hasn't pushed the deadline back on that at all. It's just making sure everything is good with 12.3 before it's released openly to the public.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if there is an emergency to release 12.3 or I didn't feel so much of the waiting of the community or anything. Maybe I didn't really pay attention to that one. What I can say is that, yeah, clearly evolution has been worked out during the whole process, which is why I'm not on 12.3 because I don't have the I don't have any more the element of dependencies that we could have with 12.2, where now 12.2 is what we have to do first before being able to do this and that. We are already working practically all on evolution already. We do have business that does what we actually have. Same thing for integration. We only propose the tools that we have today and not evolution-related stuff. But clearly, we are working all together for evolution. So I'm not sure on the content on this release. Like I said, I didn't really pay attention to what really happened on this particular side. I'm busy on other side. But I guess there is probably some stuff that will be here to set up the foundation of evolution. I guess probably related to the 3Ds we have released already, and probably master node list. So yeah, but that's my assumption. Master node list maybe have been delayed actually for next release, just to not set up everything in once.
Yeah, Joel, that's right, isn't it? The dips are being pushed back to 12.4 now. That's correct, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. I think most people are more excited about the 12.4 than 12.3. We just got to get 12.3 out first.
Yeah. And then evolution, baby. Oh, sorry, that's just the code name, right? But it's been so long, it's like ingrained.
Yeah.
But true, it has been a long process. I'm really happy to start to see, towards after MVP, if we can say like that. MVP is still the current emergency. However, with stuff being getting to be ready, it's not ready yet, but you see what I mean. We start to think of, well, that's a question that we could have asked a little bit before. It's like, okay, writing data is you have a cost to write data, but reading them is free. So how do you do if you want to have peer review system or incentivization system? So this kind of question, which needs the foundation to be laid out first in order to be asked and solved. We're actually starting to consider this kind of question. So I'm actually happy with that. But yeah, full priority is still on evolution by far. Well, MVP, I mean.
Has there been an update on the patent that's being submitted? Because last time when we did the article, it was kind of pending in process. And as your name is on that.
For those who speak American, that's a patent.
Pat. Oh yeah.
I was like, why is he talking?
Sorry, I apologize. So, like, what's the latest? Is it still pending? Do you know? Have you had any
I
updates?
absolutely don't know about the procedure that's related to patent. The only thing I know is that there is something about date, and I heard about 6 months, and something I really have no information that will be able to help you on this one.
But your name's on it, right?
But my name is on it, yeah, right.
That's got to be a good
Congratulations.
surely.
I'm still pretty, yeah, I'm clearly excited. However, I will be more excited, I guess, the day where I will be able to, well, I'm not sure it will be me, but the day where we'll be pushing the setup public button on GitHub. Because it's not like we have only one report to make public, we have a bunch of them. And, you know, it's like, okay, I've been doing that all these 2 years, now it's out. Okay, guys, let's come the issue on the PR and let's
So you're kind of
improve
like Evolution release or Kevin cure cancer with Dash, which is better.
Depending on the day.
The proposal's scope has just expanded radically. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, yes. What is actually going on? So the proposal's live. It's currently in the green, I believe, from what Brian said. So
it is. It periodically dips below into the red and scares the daylights out of us every time it does. But that's life of an entrepreneur. So we get it.
Excellent. Well, hopefully, Master Nose watching this will have found this information to be informative. I've learned a lot more from Kevin on this. So now I truly understand the importance of it. It's not just a novelty. It's not a gimmick. There's actually a real reason to be doing this. So yeah, that's been really good to know. So if you've got any questions in the live chats for Alex or Kevin, now's the time to get it in. Joel, Brian, have you got any questions for Alex or Kevin?
Yes. Maybe for Alex. I got everybody's asking about the roadmap. What do you know about that, Alex? I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah, I don't know if I set up a reply on the forum about some stuff that's going on in the next PDF release. The roadmap is being worked out. I don't know how to say that in a different way. It's not the same state today that it was 2 weeks ago, and it wasn't the same state that it was 4 weeks ago. So it's clearly being worked out, and it's clearly being worked out every day. Ideally, what would happen is that we would be doing all that kind of workout thing in open source. However, given the last precedent where some data have been set up on a roadmap, and it was a little bit, we shouldn't do that in the first place. I mean, and what happened is that we just don't do it, and we are kind of iterating on the roadmap in our hand, and we're getting at a stage where we could actually already publish it with being confident enough to not modify it the next day. So my guess is that it will happen soon. However, yeah, it can be, yeah.
Yeah, one thing I saw is that we just onboarded a new CTO, and they said they wanted to, give him a chance to kind of.
Yeah, it would be awesome.
Yes, that makes sense. But yeah, everybody, I know they're eagerly waiting.
Well, the thing is, it involves a lot of people, and that's the totally opposite. Like we had a mistake with the first roadmap where a minority of people have tried to set up dates and feature and set up live in order to give. At this time, it was the best decision in order to give the community kind of an idea of the milestone we want to go and where do we want to go. The community has since grown. A lot of people joined us, and now they are like taking this at a different level, which is, yeah, I guess if we were to release a roadmap today, I would understand why they would take it so seriously. But 2 years ago, it was a little bit different, and the whole ecosystem was a little bit different. Yeah. From this point, we learned about the mistake, and we actually involved a lot of person in order to make that a roadmap. Because if you are doing the roadmap, you better be sure that everything is still accurate and that you sort your dependency out. Have been in DAPI have been a dependency for DashPay, and DashDrive is one dependency of DAPI. You have all this dependency issue to sort out, and you have to take more. So we do care way more than we did the first place. So for me, there is actually nothing bad that I see in it. And we probably have that. It will be clearly in 2018, that for sure.
Yeah, I know it's not easy to scale. We've scaled quite a bit here recently. I said it to the guys that I'm impressed with Ryan Taylor and the scaling. And I know he's not the only one. There's other people, HR people. There's all kinds of people that have helped as well. But yeah, we've scaled pretty tremendously. I've been impressed with all the people. So yeah, it's yeah.
Yeah, we did have one question in the live chat, Alex. So it's from Anti. So they just say, do all masternodes store all the data in Dash Drive, or is each object only stored by a few masternodes?
Right now in MVP, probably all Dash Drive node will have a copy of the data. However, you clearly don't want to. You want to shard the information, and you can do that with IPFS pinning. But yeah, in MVP, we want the thing to be working, and we want to minimize the number of extra feature or additional complexity, just because if we have any issue, we have to find it right away. And when we have the foundation working out fairly secure, with every quality assurance and hacker giving a try and everything, when this is ready, working live, then we can start to be clever.
Well, okay. Well, I think we'll do one more question for Alex. But Kevin, I'm not sure if you can see the live chat, but there's some nice comments coming through for you.
Oh, I don't think I see it. No.
One from TL just saying, just want to say great show and thank you, Kevin, for all the information. We've got people agreeing with that as well. So that's really good to know.
All right.
Jeffrey Butts asks, this is directed to Alex again, asks, I would like to know more about the quorum-based DAPI implementation. Can you speak to that, or is that too heavy-handed?
No, I will take a simple example. So usually, and that's what you already do with an RPC, if you want to get some SPV information, let's say transaction block, you actually don't really care about a quorum. You care about a DAPI node that is able to give you that data, but it can be any of the 4,000 node, right? Sometimes you don't want to talk twice to a same node. I mean, if you have 4,000 node, maybe you want to ask for, I don't know, the UTXO of one address to one node and the UTXO of another address to another node. This way you spread a little bit the information and you try to avoid giving all of your information to only one node. So on this point, you don't really care about quorum. The only thing that you care is about validating that multiple DAPI node output the same, has the same answer, that there is a consensus on the answer that you ask. So you might ask multiple DAPI, but there is no reason to select one or the other. In the other hand, quorum are able to deal with everything related to state transition, but not only. If you go into the payment protocol, so it's the ability for someone else to request a payment to you and having a protocol to define how this works. What actually happened is that one user asked to his quorum that this quorum should contact the other quorum of the recipient user and tell him about the payment request. So you have a communication from one quorum to another quorum, and that's one of the things that enable the whole procedure. It's like across all the DAPI, at each point of time, you will always have some preferred node to talk to that will be here to give to service you, but you particularly. So you're not alone on this DAPI node, but it's a way to batch the amount of communication and, avoiding that one node has all the communication and all the other node have none. It's also a way to spread a little bit, to add security, to avoid you being able to control. It's actually the same thing that doing an instant send. It's the same security mechanism set in place. I mean, Darren ran some calculation on what is the ability for you to be able to control the majority on a quorum, and you actually cannot even think about it. So because it's so much low, and even if you would to try, well, the price would skyrocket, making you impossible to do it. at all in the end. So it's basically using the same security that works really great on the first layer and implementing that on the second one with additional service.
Mind blown.
Yeah. This is. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question with a comment preface. Yeah, I'll be the negative Nancy of this whole thing. So, I've had a few friends of mine who are Masternode owners who say the only reason they're not 100% in Dash, they're 50-50 with Dash and something else. The only reason they're not 100% in Dash is because members of Dash Core have repeatedly said things along the lines of, we don't do deadlines. And they say that as software developers, that is one of the most massive red flags they could encounter, that not having actual development deadlines is a terrible sign for the future, and they don't really believe that Evolution is ever going to come out or be that good. And so, and obviously these are not my words, these are someone else's words. And so, given that, what kinds of metrics and milestones does the core team intend to give to the community that will be able to be tracked and stuck to? And for example, 12.3 was alluded to happen several weeks ago. It was like, oh, it's almost done, we're about to release it, and then just crickets. No. And obviously we've heard since then through various scattered communication channels, oh, there's been some delays here, there's been this problem there, but there's been no, hey guys, we ran into some stuff, we're currently this, we're gonna delay it another week or something like that, or hey, this is where we're at. They're basically zero communication when things get delayed. So basically, yeah, what's the plan to solve all that? Or do you, if
That's
you can
not
even
a fair
if you
answer.
even the guy
To the first part.
Not strategy, communications, or in charge of software development.
Now, to the first part, I actually agree with this guy, kinda. I mean, not having any deadline is pretty a red flag, and I'm agreeing on that. It's not the case. Actually, we have red flag each week, each 2 weeks as part of the sprint. Sometime in the day, like I will take an example. I think it was Sunday. We had a problem with Insight UI, so we had to fix the problem. In order to do so, it's like I receive a mail. When can you do that? And I answer and I give a time. And at this time, it's solved. And indeed, it's solved now. So we had a deadline, and it was a short one live. It was maybe a daily. It was a deadline somewhere in the day to fix some critical emergency. And we do have that for various of different things we do, and have multiple dates for evolution, for instance, that I have for a long time now. And I didn't really change my date. Yeah, maybe 1 or 2 months more, but we all have deadlines everywhere, and we have to, because we work in, we have dependency in the team. I am being dependent on certain part of code that needs to be done, so I need to communicate and to know when I will have this available for me. And it's also very important that I get the date as right as possible, so I can estimate the good time. So let's say I have something in 1 week. I need to find something that will take me the week, so I get my time productive while waiting for something else, right? So we do have deadline. The thing here that I understand is that we don't give public deadline. I don't know how much experienced are your developer about working on a decentralized organization. I have to admit that Dash is actually the first decentralized network I'm working on. So it's something else to give deadline to a CEO than to give deadline to 4,000 masternode, and I don't even know how many members of the community. So yeah, I don't know what I could say on that. I mean, we have deadline. We just don't want to give public date because the public is more. And it's actually like every video game, so whatever that I heard, like, when does Half-Life 3 get out? It get out when it's ready. This is the answer for the public. I'm sure the CEO of Valve has another information and another date in his mind. For the question about what kind of milestone we could give to the community, this actually is a really good question. The problem is, how do you measure a milestone except being able to have the feature tested? reviewed and published, right? So what is the metric first before being able to know what do you want to give them? And right now we have several metrics, but most of them are really synthesized into, epic, story, and feature. So I guess that the roadmap will be a list of epics, and a milestone will be when a epics is done. So the definition of done is not so much trivial, because done doesn't just mean that me as a developer, I coded my thing and that's it, it's done. No, it also means that other people reviewed that we had fixed if any issue typo existed. It means that it has been tested, and all the procedure of merging that. But this is the trivial part.
Yeah,
So,
Well, I was going to say, there's a lot of questions, but until the roadmap is released, we just got to wait for the roadmap to be released. It may answer a lot of those questions, Joel, that your people have. We don't know. We got to wait for that. We got to wait for it.
Now, here's a random half serious suggestion, right? We all know that Domino's Pizza is the star of the recent moments because, in addition to providing drunk and high people with a cheap way of getting grease and carbs into their system at all hours of the night, they've also taken upon themselves to start fixing the roads. So while we're talking about the great things that Domino's Pizza has been doing, one thing they have is they have that little like progress bar when you order the pizza about, is it like in the oven? Is it like done? Is it out for delivery and then delivered? And so you can just watch the progress bar. And so could we do an interactive sort of roadmap where each epic or milestone or whatever had the little progress bar? It's in the oven, it's out in testing, it's like almost in production, it's test net, whatever. And actually just have that for each one.
There is the thing. GitHub actually does that already. And that's how you could know the percentage of evolution of 12.2, 12.3. You actually can know this information, and this is the public information. I know that not so much people know how to find it, even if it's pretty easy. You just go on the GitHub and you click on dash pay dash, you go on pull request, you see where you see 12.3, you click on it, you will have your percentage there. So this would be for core code. I don't know how do you do any kind of percentage estimation of any partnership or any conference or anything. So I will remove that from your question. I mean, you just talk about development here. Having the ability, so you all know already about the unknown, but that's just getting the 100%. It's complicated to have your 100% being sure. But let's say that it's not a problem. It happened already in a GitHub core. I mean, when a new PR came in, it's reducing the percentage because you have the total number is bigger. We probably could do that. It would just require a lot of. It would require kind of additional procedure to get that out. Ideally, we would have the word into our Jira, and they would see everything. And Jira already does that. I mean, I'm not sure we want to spend all the fund for $10 per person on Jira, and I don't even sure we want to do that at the first place, just because of the noise it could. I mean, I don't want to be on my Jira board looking at the task and having a question asking me when Lambo, when Moon's here.
When Evo.
When Evo. No, actually, when Evo would be probably. Well, it wouldn't be solved. It just would give us a vision at a time. The whole point of what we are doing with this PDF is to give a snapshot at a point on time of what is going on, actually. It has maybe 3-4 days delay, so already some stuff happened in this day, but at one point of time, it gave really high-level perspective on what's happening. It gave the next, it gave problems, and well, for the previous one, you just go for previous document. This is the information that really I think is really needed in terms. I mean, for me, I think it's when I'm discussing with Nathan, with the team, with other people about what I did during the last 2 weeks, I'm just giving up this kind of information. I'm not going into the detail, and I'm not sure the community would love to know the detail either. So I guess having a roadmap with epics, these documents that outline what are the epics that I work on. Plus, actually, it's more going into the feature part. It's like, okay, really defining that the fact that we are working on the messaging protocol, that we're working on this particular feature, with the roadmap being an epic at higher level, which is ability to do this or ability to do that. These two information, and indeed we still miss to release the roadmap, but should give enough information in order to establish this percentage. It wouldn't be something automated on a website and you go on like it's avo.when, and when you go on that, you have a percentage bar. You could do it though, I guess. I don't want to do it just because I don't feel that it's a valuable thing to do right now. I do find that really fun. I mean, I would really love to have like, you know, an Arduino display with a percentage of progress of my work, and, you know, being able to use that as a social thing, being like, no, I'm only at 50 or 1% or 99%, whatever. I'm only at 99%. So if I want to be able to, whatever.
Do you
I think it's an interesting idea. Yeah.
Yes, a good idea. I mean, like, I can see where Joel's going with this, and we only need to look into the crypto space itself. Now, it can be used for hype and speculation, just like EOS that launched recently. People are counting down the last 30 days. So perhaps when there's 30 days to go until the Evolution launch, you could do something, because one, it gets people talking, but then it actually lets people know that it's coming. It's just not going to be randomly launched. But it also makes me think of John McAfee. What's the website? I think it might be dick.line or dick.info, but I mean, that just shows the, you know, because you follow the price line and everything else, but people can go to it, right? And they can see. It's like, do you remember when people were talking about Ethereum and the flipping in? And you could go to, I believe that website is still live.
There's flipping still up. I was actually just there. Flippening.watch, about like the Ethereum flippening to Bitcoin, and in a lot of ways it's clearly happened, in a lot of ways it hasn't. Then there's flappening.watch, which is like Litecoin trying to take over Bitcoin Cash.
Well,
And that's not going so well, but
about making the Dash in. He's already done a fantastic job with the Dash Intel website, which is still in
dashing.watch. And just you could compare
just with numbers, just showing the parallels, because it just gives you a snapshot you can just go to, and you could break down numbers and analytics, whether just, you know, comparison, even just percentage differences and that sort of stuff. Because if people aren't thinking it, they don't know about it. But if you plant that seed, people start thinking about it. It works for others, so why not us?
Yeah, we're about an hour and a half in, so it was a great podcast.
People are getting snoozy.
Lots of great questions answered. It was really good, but we go on for hours, and we will at the after party, but it's probably time to wrap it up.
Right. All right. Joel, as I forgot to do the shout out last week for the after party, I think
nobody showed up. Yeah.
More capable in your hands.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. And if you have any other questions for me, feel free to reach out to me on Dash.
Nope, be cut out.
Yeah, but we will still feel free to reach out.
On Discord and
so he might be in the after party. Maybe that's what he's doing. He's just getting crunk early. But so there's the after party. Dashchat.org takes you to the Dash Nation Discord. It's a happening, fun, happy place. And you start asking around, hey, where's the Three Amigos after party? Where's the after party at? Why can't I get into the after party? And then someone should probably get you into the super secret after party. It's like this, but very much more casual. And it can go on for hours and hours on end with different people floating in and out. And there's only 10 spots available, 3 of which I occupy at any time. I'm just kidding. But there's always 10 spots available. And they'll come in and out. And it's very casual. It's believe it or not, a lot of really great work and ideas being fleshed out happens in there, even though that's absolutely not the point of it. So it just, if ever you get, if you want to get into the celebrity culture, that crypto celebrity culture that Dash seems to be a little bit lacking in, you want to promote that a little bit more. If you think that's good for the ecosystem, or if you just want to hang out, dashchat.org, start asking about the after party. Probably in the main Dash Talk channel might be a good place to look.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to be there. Alex, you're going to be there, right?
I'm going to be there.
See, everyone's going to be there. Kevin, you're more than welcome to join us as well in Discord.
Now, where do I find this? This is in the Dash Talk and Discord?
So I can send you an
just
invite.
start asking about the after party. It's like, yeah, it's so super cool and secret. You have to be invited.
All right. I'm asking.
And there's only 10 spaces available. So if we're all going to be there, first come, first served, you better get in there quick.
All right.
So thank you, Alex.
I'm going to go auction off my seat.
Yeah, so although you're coming into the after party, Alex, thank you for coming on for the second half and answering those difficult questions.
Yes. That I didn't ask. I'm but a vessel. I'm just the messenger.
Yeah, no problem. No, I mean, it was for a question, I guess, and I have no problem answering this one. So thank you. In general, thank you.
Excellent.
Pleasure meeting you, Alex.
Well done on the questions for Kevin today. Good stuff.
Thank you.
It's been very informative, and I've learned a lot as well. And I hope those that are watching and listening on the podcast as well have enjoyed it as well. If you are watching this on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out, get that message out. We do this every Friday, 3 p.m. EST, 8 p.m. BST, if you're on my side of the pond. Thanks for watching episode
standard time
56 of the Dash Force Free Amigos podcast. Have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you next Friday. Stay dashy.
Peace.